I want to get your assessment of the temperature across the country right now.
Well, with regards to political violence, the conditions were set, unfortunately, before this incident for us to see more political violence. But this is not something, let me back up. While I truly appreciate the comments that the governor of Utah has put out, and he has been a real mature voice during all of this, unfortunately, this is not only a result of social media. That is certainly a contributing factor. It takes people down rabbit holes, it makes them isolated, and both of those things could be true with the path to mobilization to violence in this case. But it's more than that. It's over a decade of the post-truth era, where alternative facts and conspiracy theories drive people towards looking for information that confirms their biases. It's partisan politics, this extreme polarization in the United States, all of which is driving people in opposite directions. And we also have young men in particular who seem hopeless and grievance driven. It's why we've had several of these events that look very nihilistic, whether school shootings or some of these acts of political violence. They're hopeless and they're acting out and they're using violence as their message. That is not a healthy way forward for this country. And what you do need is more people like the governor of Utah putting a message of unity and stop the demonization of the other side and start identifying each other as fellow citizens, fellow Americans. And while we may disagree, that we're in this together.
Ashley, you've been covering, as I said, Donald Trump for a decade now. You covered the White House as well. I'm curious. I mean, emotions have been running high, obviously. It is a person that they were close to that was murdered, and there are videos, horrible videos of it online. It is horrific. It's been a few days. What is your sense of things inside 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
My sense of things is the same as it was, frankly, the day Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And we as the nation and the White House and the West Wing were finding it out in real time. I went over to the White House that day. In the West Wing, from staff, this was nonstop on TV. There were wet eyes, red eyes, grim faces, staffers, who are frankly pretty stoic in the face of all manner of political catastrophe, really struggling not to break down. I was there when the president ordered the flags lowered to half staff. And in the days since, that emotion is still incredibly real. And I do think Charlie Kirk was a giant in the MAGA movement and was incredibly important to the president politically. Turning Points, you could argue, was really crucial to helping reelect him this time. But one thing, even though we talk about it, that I still think does get lost is just how close as a person Charlie Kirk was to President Trump, to his son, Don Jr., and to any number of White House staffers. And so that emotion, even about, not quite a week later, half a week later, it is still incredibly raw and intense at the White House and in the MAGA movement and in the president's orbit.
David, what about in Republican politics?
He was bigger than the MAGA movement, and I think that's part of the reaction you've seen here. He was a giant in the Republican Party. And so even if you didn't think of yourself as a MAGA Republican, you had some affiliation or affection or admiration for Charlie Kirk. And across the country, he was such a giant with so many young people, college students, high school students. You don't grow an organization to have 800 plus chapters in colleges across the country, and then possibly even more on high school campuses, if you're not breaking through and if people aren't listening to you. And so he touched a lot of people. A lot of people disagreed with him. A lot of people took issue with things that he said. But he was not just a figure within a corner of one of our major political parties. He was really a cultural icon as well as a political icon on the center right broadly and with so many young people. And so I think that is in part why this has been such an earth-shattering heinous event for so many people who looked to him or knew him or felt like they knew him to go through.
You know, we're all chronically online to some degree or another. Younger people probably more so even than you and I. And one of the most terrible things about this, there's a lot of awful things, but one of the most terrible things is that it was caught on camera from multiple angles. And those videos are still up and they're still online and they're circulating. And they're not only deeply angering people and horrifying them, they're also desensitizing a whole generation. I was speaking to a teenager over the weekend and asking if he had seen it. And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you think? And he was like, well, and I just can't imagine, you know, shrugging my shoulders if I were 17 and seeing something like that in my face. I think I would have been really shaken by it. But it seems like there are a lot of people that it doesn't affect the same way any longer because we're so used to seeing horrific violence on our phones.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a totally fair point. I mean, when I was young, you know, there was this, you could get videotapes at the store that showed horrible deaths called Faces of Death, right? Like, that was what we had to do to, like, see those sorts of things. You had to choose to see it. It wasn't just sort of in your feed and on your phones. So we very much are in a different space. And I think one of the things that's under-recognized as a pattern in American society over the course of the past decade plus is the fact that all of us have camera phones, is the fact that we can share that information. I think it is very safe to argue, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement was driven very heavily by the omnipresence of cell phones, right? Of people being able to share footage of things that were happening. And now we're seeing a new facet of it with this, you know, this overlap of this horrible moment in American politics with the fact that we can share this information. One of the striking things about what happened last week, too, was there were people in the crowd who were trying to use the moment for social media clout, right? There's a guy who was caught, you know, taping himself immediately after the shooting and trying to get internet, acclaim for being there. And it's just, it is well taken that it is not just social media. Like the point that was made earlier, it is not just social media, but social media is a huge aspect of it. And this idea that particularly among young, but not exclusively among young people, that the way you become successful is through social media, I think is a factor here as well.
I think that's a really good point. I want to ask you this, Chris, because we were talking about this when it happened, the profile of people who commit this sort of extreme and terrible violence. And you were talking about how the profile has changed over the years. For a long time, it was coming from, how did you put it, the extreme left in earlier decades?
Different periods in the United States where you could, different periods of unrest, tumultuous times where there were times where we had violence that would come from what we would consider more left-leaning groups. If you go way back in American history, the anarchist movement was really heavy, straight up through post, into Vietnam and through the 70s. But then we start seeing some of the neo-Nazi groups and the militia movement really start to emerge in the 80s, which really culminated in the Oklahoma City bombing. Most domestic violent extremists went away, though, after September 11th for the next 15 or so years because they didn't want to be categorized the same way that Al-Qaeda was by committing violence on behalf of a cause. We're just seeing a reemergence really on both sides right now.
Well, I wanted to get that basis because I want to ask you about something that the vice president said today when he was hosting Charlie Kirk's podcast. He sat in for Kirk today, and we have two sound bites. I'm going to play the one about him saying one side has a bigger problem. Let's play it.
In a country of 330 million people, you can, of course, find one person of a given political persuasion justifying this or that or almost anything. But the data is clear. People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth we must be told.
So people on the left have been pointing to what happened in Minnesota, the Democratic lawmakers, and saying, what about this? And so we're getting into the cycle of whataboutism. You understand the data better than I do, certainly. Give me your sense of what Vance was saying and the context where the truth lies.
Yeah, so just for background, I spent my entire career studying and working as a practitioner in countering terrorism. That includes Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, far left groups, far right groups. I am agnostic. I have chased down extremists from every corner, every ideology. So I say this as objectively as I can. The vice president is absolutely inaccurate. I can tell you that from 2015 on, Charlottesville, we saw a spike in violent extremism coming from the right. Accelerationist groups like the Adam Waffen Division really took off for a while. Militia groups like the Patriot Front, Patriot Prayer, Oath Keepers, Three Percenters, Proud Boys, those are all far-right groups. But we have seen a slower reemergence of more radical actions from the left as well. So I think we're seeing both of them come together, which is really alarming. The last thing I'll say is there's also this amalgamation of mixed ideologies now, where we have individuals sitting at home isolated, and they're not joining formal groups, and they're taking pieces of different ideologies or these kind of hybrid groups like 764, which is a little accelerationist, but also anti-Semitic at the same time, or O9A, Order of Nine Angles, which somehow combines admiration for jihadi groups with also being neo-Nazi. So it's really strange mix. There's also this underlying incel, thread throughout all of it. The point being is it's hard to pin down some of these ideologies. It's mostly just frustration and grievance driven, and people are looking for something to belong to so they can have an outlet. Now, I understand the vice president, believes based on, recent upticks that this is leftist, but I also will tell you that some of these more recent attacks, including President Trump's first assassination attempt, it was very nihilistic and really hard to say what the ideology was.